Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 456 for the 16th of July, 2017. Richard Saunders here with you from a beautifully cold and crisp and delightful Sydney, Australia. I do like this time of year. I do like the wintry days. In fact, it's very cold across Australia, and down in the south I noticed they're having quite a cold snap with record-breaking cold temperatures. I think I'll have to have a Skeptic Zone expedition down there to investigate. But what's coming up on this week's episode? We have a few short reports, short interviews from NECSS, the Northeast Conference of Science and Skepticism, a couple of weeks ago in New York. I catch up with Sharon from Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia, and also I chat to Dr Harriet Hall. Now, Harriet gave such an interesting talk at the convention, and during her talk she mentioned a book called Nibbling on Einstein's Brain, The Good, the Bad, and the Bogus in Science by Diane Swanson, and I have a copy of the book right here because as soon as she recommended it during her talk, I went online and I bought myself a copy, and I think on next week's episode we'll have a review. Just flipping through it now, it looks really good. It's all about critical thinking and science for children. Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Hall, for recommending that book. Anyway, a chat with Sharon from Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia and Harriet Hall coming up at the top of the show. Following that, it's Brew Ha Ha Science. This week, AI, artificial intelligence in the home, possibly saving lives. A very interesting and slightly spooky but slightly good report. Then it's Dr. Rachie Reports with Dr Rachael Dunlop. This week, Dr Rachie interviews Craig Egan about his activities following the Vaxxed bus. The Vaxxed bus. This is the Vaxxed. This is this pseudo-documentary put together by Andrew Wakefield and a bunch of by Andrew Wakefield and his friends. And Craig apparently is following the Vaxxed bus around the United States to put his point of view, to refute some of the information coming out about that documentary. I think you'll find Craig's enthusiasm when he chats to Dr. Rachie infectious, if I may use that term. Anyway, Dr. Rachie Reports coming up a bit later on in the show. After that, a report from the Australian Skeptics about the Therapeutic Goods Administration publishing a draft list of permitted indications for listed complementary medicines. Now, some of the terms that they're throwing about include things like yin and yang. It gives you some idea. What woo can we expect from the government? Hopefully none. Anyway, that report coming up a little bit later on in the show. Then to round off the show, it's guest reporter Kevin Davies interviewing Professor John Carver from the Research School of Chemistry at the Australian National University. And Professor Carver is going to be telling Kevin about the misconceptions when it comes to chemicals. Chemicals are everywhere. Is anything really chemical-free? Find out when Kevin Davies interviews Professor John Carver. And a big thank you to Kevin Davies, who occasionally does some guest reporting. Much appreciated. Well, that's enough from me at the moment. I'm going to run downstairs, have another glass of hot water. This is an empty glass. Hot water and ginger, because my throat's still a little bit dry. I'm not sure what's going on when I fly across the Pacific from California back home. Well, when I fly anywhere, really. Long flights tend to dry out the throat. I'm nearly back to together, to normal, if I ever really was. I'm going to run downstairs, have some more hot water and ginger to soothe the sore throat. And while I'm doing that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. the first day, well, really it's the second day of the Northeast Conference of Science and Skepticism. Oh, hello. I don't know what's going on in the other room. We'll find out soon. I'm with Sharon from Guerrilla Skepticism. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. That's the voice you know, folks, from the It Never Ends.
You've heard me on the podcast before. I do the promo.
So what's it like being part of the Guerrilla Skepticism outfit?
Well, Susan definitely keeps us on our toes all the time. She's always telling me that I need to get in there and keep working on my edits. So, yes. But it's fun,
really?
And you feel like you're doing a lot of good.
This is a side of Susan I didn't know about. She's a bit of a hard taskmaster, eh?
She does keep on us, definitely.
Well, so she should.
Yes.
But it's an amazing outfit, and the work is never ending, huh?
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, there's so many new things to write about, and then always keeping track of what, is being edited on your websites or your Wikipedia pages that, you want to make sure that the truth is out there. So
I guess we should give a shout out to Susan, who I'm sure would have loved to have been here.
Oh, I know she would, yeah. She was constantly saying how much she was disappointed that she wasn't going to be here as well. But we'll see her at SciCon.
Oh, now I would like to go to SciCon, but I don't think I can make that one, unfortunately. But I'm glad she will be. And you too, huh?
Yes, I will. Mm-hmm.
And that's in Las Vegas?
Las Vegas, yes.
Yeah. And I do miss going to Las Vegas because the amazing meeting is no longer happening.
Well, this is taking its place.
Well, I wouldn't. Yes, taking its place. A substitute. No, there's sort of. It's the next best, brighter sort of thing.
Yeah. I never made it to any TAM, so I don't know how to compare it. But the program looks like it's going to be really interesting.
It does, and the program for this event, we're in the emergency alternative room because there was a bit of a fire situation where we were supposed to meet for NECSS. So we're in the Pennsylvania Hotel opposite Madison Square Garden. And why don't we walk through here? We're just past the registration area. And we're walking into the auditorium now. My goodness me, this is a surprise. I'll have to get a little trolley to get down to the other end, I think. This is huge. This is much bigger than I anticipated. So, and the crowd are beginning to take their seats down the far end, right near the stage. And if we keep walking long enough, we'll reach.
We'll get to the front eventually.
We'll get to the front eventually. And they've got big screens set up and cameras, so people all the way back. Let me have a look down here. Way back to the back of the room. So everybody will be able to get a good view of what's going on. So I think they did very well to get this. I think they did very well. Well, we should prepare for the next few days of music, apparently. The crowd gathering behind us. I'm here at the front of the auditorium with Dr. Harriet Hall. Hello, Harriet.
Hello, Richard.
Impromptu interview, this is.
Pardon?
It's an impromptu interview.
Impromptu.
Okay. I just wanted to say that how grateful I am that you did that series of videos which we advertise frequently on the Skeptic Zone, science-based medicine, and I'm sure my listeners are very familiar with this series by now. And that was, 2 years? 1 year? How long did you do those?
I lose track of time. It must have been 2 years ago.
It sounds about right to me. And in that time, since it's been online, what has been the general reaction?
Oh, I've gotten all kinds of wonderful feedbacks from several different countries around the world. Had one from a lady in Denmark who said her autistic daughter had watched it and was really impressed. She says, that lady really says it like it is.
Well, I must say that she's right. And it's one of the delights of your video series is you call it as it is, which is quite charming in a way. But you must have had some surprising, shall we say, negative feedback too.
Not so much on the video series. I get a lot of negative emails on the articles that I write for science-based medicine. But sometimes the feedback I get is really pretty meaningless. They say things like, you don't know what you're talking about. You should stop saying those things. I mean, how do you respond to something like that?
Yeah. Well, anyway, again, thank you for doing that video series. I think it's a wonderful overview of not only things like homeopathy and energy medicine and chiropractic, which you talk about, but the general principles of science-based medicine. I can't recommend it highly enough.
Well, thank you very much. I tried to distill into that presentation all of what I've learned since I've been working with science-based medicine. And I have learned a lot, believe me.
I believe it.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
Dr Harriet Hall, MD, known to thousands as the Skepdoc, a retired family physician and former Air Force flight surgeon. She writes about medicine, so-called complementary and alternative medicine, science, quackery, and critical thinking. Harriet now has a free course, a series of 10 video lectures on science-based medicine and alternative medicine. The videos and an accompanying course guide can be found by following the link at skepdoc.info or by visiting web.randy.org/educational-modules.html. Topics covered in the series are science-based medicine versus evidence-based medicine, what is CAM, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy and herbal medicine, energy medicine, miscellaneous alternatives, pitfalls in research, and science-based medicine in the media and politics. Harriet covers each topic in a matter-of-fact, no-nonsense way that's sure to educate and entertain. Skepdoc.info.
And now, direct from the cafe at Australia's Science Channel, it's Brew Ha Ha. Science in less time than it takes to order a coffee. With Shuj Esufali.
A heartbreaking situation was avoided with the help of technology recently in the United States. An artificially intelligent device was accidentally prompted to call law enforcement during a domestic violence incident. When the phone call connected, emergency services could hear the conflict and sent police officers. When they arrived, they stepped in, broke up the struggle, and potentially saved the life of a woman and her child. The device that saved the day wasn't designed to do so, but we're so glad it did. Technology continues to improve our lives in ways we didn't expect. Domestic violence is where AI could make a dramatic impact. Far too often, victims of domestic violence don't or aren't able to report their abuse or their abusers. And when they do find a way to tell someone, their reports are treated with suspicion. An artificially intelligent system can turn shades of grey into black and white. AI won't give anyone a second chance or the benefit of the doubt, and a hard drive will remember exactly what happened every single time you ask it.
For more Brew Ha Ha and Australian science, visit www.australiascience.tv or visit Australia's Science Channel on Facebook.
Hey, Richard.
Oh, hi, Trish. Hi. Would you like a coffee?
Yeah, thanks. What are you working on?
I'm trying to come up with a new promo to play on the Skeptic Zone.
Who's it for?
The Good Thinking Society in the UK. You know, Michael Marshall, Simon Singh, Laura Thomas and that crowd.
Oh, yeah, I know them.
Oh.
They've been doing some great work investigating veterinary homeopathy.
Veterinary homeopathy? What, you sugar pills for cows?
I know, right? And also they're looking at some of the dodgy medical advice given by UK chiropractors.
Really? Okay, look, I'll mention all that in the promo. Now, their website is goodthinkingsociety.org.
And they've recently been reporting on the resurgence of faith healer Peter Popov.
Peter Popov. Great. Okay, look, thanks for that. It gives me something good to think about.
Now it's time for Dr Rachie Reports with Dr Rachael Dunlop.
Hello listeners, and welcome to Dr Rachie Reports. Well, this week I speak to Craig Egan, who is a pro-vaccine activist who has been following the Vaxxed bus around America, simply doing some protesting by holding up a sign and just sort of being there to remind them that they might be misinformed in the information that they're spreading around the country. And we met up in Jackson, Wyoming, when he was halfway through his tour to talk about what was happening. And here he is, Craig Egan.
So I'm sitting in the lab here in Jackson, Wyoming with the wonderful and amazing super duper pharmaciel Craig Egan. Hello, Craig. Welcome to the Skeptic Zone.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, this is incredible, right? So I didn't really know much about what you've been doing, but you are following the Vaxxed bus around America.
Yeah.
Holding them to account, I guess. And I really only found out about this last night, and you happen to be in Idaho Falls, which is 90 minutes away, so you've come to town. Mm-hmm. We're going to go out and have some dinner, and you can tell me all about what's been happening on the Vaxxed bus tour. So tell me how this actually started.
It started, like most of my grand adventures, as a joke. And I've been arguing with anti-vaxxers on Facebook for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And I knew the Vaxxed bus was going around the country, and I knew what their mission was, but they were coming through my town where I live in Tacoma, Washington, and setting up camp literally 6 blocks away. So there was something I just couldn't ignore, that they were going to be that close to my house.
Yeah.
So I got myself a sign, a little $2, pen on poster board sign, and went down to protest them. Maybe just have some conversations, which I did. But the first conversation I really had was with a news reporter for the television news. And so I was like, well, that was easy to get on TV and, get my voice heard a little bit at least. And so I went home and I looked at the rest of the schedule to see who they were going to, because they were going to Seattle, which is also very close, and then some other towns in Washington. And I just kind of offhand made the joke, what if I followed them around like they were the Grateful Dead? And I just set up, my little tent right next to them every time they did it. And one thing led to another. Some people were like, hey, I would totally chip in for that. And so I was like, okay, if people are demanding it, I'll put up a GoFundMe. And the GoFundMe got $7,000 in 3 days.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And humbling, because there are definitely GoFundMes out there that are way more deserving. But now I'm trying to make the most of it. I'm trying to get there. So I've been to Montana, Idaho, many stops in Washington. We're going to be going to Kansas and Missouri and Minneapolis and Des Moines. We're going to be all over.
So what's the reaction been like from the anti-vaxxers? Because you were already known to them, right, before this.
Many of them, yes.
So tell us who is on this Vaxxed bus tour first.
So at every stop, you've got Suzanne Humphreys. You've got Polly Tommy, who produces the movie. And then on select occasions, Andrew Wakefield himself will show up and do a Q&A. Yeah, so I actually sat in a room with Andrew Wakefield and watched him answer questions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's the weirdest feeling. It's like the opposite of starstruck. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like these people that you've known, as not a celebrity, but as a villain, if you will, for a long time. And to be in the room with 3 of them, watching a Q&A, it's kind of surreal.
And what's their reaction to you been like? Have they been aggressive or upset, or do they just ignore you? What's happened?
So they have not been aggressive. One of them actually brought me a bottle of water when I was standing in the heat on one of the first stops. Some of the attendees have been a little more, not aggressive, but definitely confrontational with me. Mm-hmm. I've gotten to some discussions, I've gotten to some arguments, but it's all been mostly civil. The reaction online is way out of control. Everybody, they think I'm attacking their children. They think I'm there to videotape their children. I'm some sort of child predator. They think I'm being they simultaneously claim that I'm absolutely disorganized and amateur, which is true, but I'm also being funded by Big Pharma. And so I don't know how they can reconcile those two ideas. This is the best pharma can send. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not being sent by anybody. I'm just a dude who had a funny idea, you know.
If Big Pharma was going to do this, I don't reckon they'd just send one bloke, would they? Oh, you have a friend with you, though.
I do have a friend with me, but he's not really part of the fight. He's just there to hold the camera, really. Right. And so he just kind of stays out of the way and makes sure I don't get in too much trouble.
So what do you actually do? Do you go to the screenings, or do you stand at the front, or what do you do? Yeah,
so the way their tour is mostly set up is they will just basically pull up the bus, they'll put up a couple of, booth tents, to cover a table, and they've got a lot of merch there. They're selling T-shirts, they're selling hats. And then they called me a shill. But
of course,
right. But really what they're doing is they're bringing people onto the bus and hearing their stories. And so they're collecting stories from people who either are convinced that vaccines damaged their child in some way, or now they're expanding that out to where families are coming in and bringing their vaccinated and unvaccinated children in and saying, look at the health differences between my vaccinated kid and my unvaccinated kid.
Right.
And
so it's very well controlled and scientifically run.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There's no selection bias at work here at all. Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. And honestly, it's actually really disturbing to me. I got $20 on a bet that more damage is being done to those kids by bringing them on a bus and introducing them as their damaged kid than any vaccines have ever cost. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think it's just really kind of gross.
I find that really disturbing. There's a guy in Australia who was a hero amongst the anti-vaxxers for a few months, and now he's not anymore, but he's got 2 or 3 grown male kids, and he declared recently that they were vaccine damaged. And I was thinking, imagine if that was me. If my mum turned around tomorrow and said, oh, by the way, you're vaccine damaged, I think I'd be horrified.
Yeah, absolutely. That really bothers me. And you can, maybe I'm picking up something that wasn't there, but standing at these buses and watching the interaction between these parents and kids, because they all bring their kids out to the bus, they really treat the kids with conditions differently. Like you can see, oh, that's the vaccine damaged kid. There's my perfect healthy kid. And it's really just kind of gross. Yeah. It's sad. And I wish it wasn't like that. I'm not there. I'm not going to change their minds, but I can't believe that's the angle they're taking on it. It's really kind of disturbing.
And so, do they come up to you and speak to you, or do they throw things at you? Or
both. Yeah. So, many of them have come up and spoke to me. Sometimes, like I said, more confrontational than others. Some of them very polite. And it's difficult because when a parent comes up to you and says, "Vaccines killed my child." You just can't argue with that, and you're not going to win an argument with them. You're not going to be the one, if they believe that for 20 years, to change their mind. And so the angle I try to take, if I can, is basically to say, I can't argue with you about your kid. I don't know your story. All I know is that following anti-vaxxers for the past years, I have heard every claim under the sun. I've heard cancer. I've heard leukemia. I've heard multiple sclerosis. I've heard vaccines made my kid gay. I've heard...
Wow.
Oh, yeah. No, really? Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I've got the screenshots. I'll send them to you sometime.
I mean, I believe that, but I don't think I've ever heard it.
Yeah, there's really anything under the sun that they could view as an issue. They blame on vaccines. So that's what I explained to a person. I can't speak to your story. All I can do is put your story in that context. Yeah. And say, and just talking to some of the people that have went on the bus to tell their story, you've got one person who says, oh, my kid got a vaccine, and a month later they were diagnosed with autism. And then the next person comes, and then they put their name on the bus as vaccine injured. And then the next person comes along and says, my kid got a vaccine, and 6 months later they had a food allergy, and I made that connection. And they're like, oh, okay, and they put the name on the bus. And so really, they're not even trying to self-select a pattern. They're not even finding a pattern. They've got all these names on the bus, and they're presenting it as, the smoking gun evidence that vaccines damage. But none of these stories are even alike. Yeah. And so it's... Any single one of those claims would be a big deal. It would be a big deal to say vaccines cause autism. But they've got a laundry list of claims. Yeah. And the longer the list gets, the less credible any of it is.
And so I'm interested to hear what it was like to sit in the same room as Andrew Wakefield, because I'm not sure how I'd respond. Tell me what that was like. And
yeah, so this was maybe the second stop I went to, it was very early. I had I showed up and I wasn't sure they were going to know anybody was going to know who I was, but I had been to the stop at my town like two days before. So I showed up. It was at a church, and I just went and found myself a seat in the back, the very back, and just quietly sat there. A lady came up to me and was like, "Oh, what brings you here today? Do you have vaccine injury in your family?" Like, "No, somebody just suggested it." "Oh, well, do you know anything about these studies?" Started, kind of prodding me. I was like, "No, I'm just, I tried to keep quiet." And then finally she was like, "You don't want to talk about this, do you?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just kind of here for the movie." She's like, "I know who you are." And I was like, "Yeah, I figured you did," Oh, wow. And then she started saying about her vaccine. She was the one who said that her kid had a dairy allergy 6 months after a vaccine, and she made that connection. And all of a sudden there were 4 people surrounding me. Trying and I was like, but they were okay. They were civil. They were kind, and they were like, "Well, just watch the movie with an open mind." Okay, but the movie that they're showing on the tour is just like a 20-minute teaser. It's not the full version.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So then you have to go and buy it.
Yeah, they've got them on sale. They've got them on sale at the merch desk. Yeah, of course, for $20 a pop. But they just show you like the 20-minute condensed version. Okay. So I watched it, and it was BS,
Yeah.
Just a lot of emotional pleas and not a lot of science. And then Andrew Wakefield came out, and Polly Tommy and Suzanne Humphreys, and they were on stage, and it was a Q&A, and I kept my mouth shut. I'm like, if I'm going to get confrontational, I've got plenty of stops in the future. I don't need to burn my bridge today. So I watched it, and it was like they want to say, "Oh, we're not anti-vaccine. We just believe in choice," right? But then of course they get up and make claims. Like Polly Tommy got up and said, like very specifically, doctors know that vaccines cause injury. They do it on purpose because healthy kids don't make them any money. And that's why they kick unvaccinated children out of their practices, because they can't make any money off them because they don't have any health problems.
Wow.
And I was like, how can you stand there and say this isn't accident vaccine and then claim doctors are poisoning children on purpose for profit?
Yeah.
It's, you know what I mean? And so I bit my tongue.
Their arguments are not meant to be logical.
No, they're not.
Makes sense, Craig. Okay?
No, of course not. They're conspiracy accusations. They're insane, right?
Yeah.
And so they got to the point where they said, well, this is the last question. And I was like, well, I'm just going to sneak out now. And so I tried to. And the lady who had talked to me before kind of followed me to the lobby and then just kind of cornered me for like a good another 15, 20 minutes. And I'm trying to explain, hey, I left my girlfriend and her kid at Chuck E. Cheese at a safe spot while I came to the screening. I have to go pick them up now. And she just kept on and on and on. And finally, I just had to excuse myself and go. But it was weird. It was kind of surreal. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so the next time I went to a screening was in Spokane. That's where people got a little more confrontational. They had the bus outside. We did that part. And then there was going to be a screening. And the lady who was the local organizer was like, no, you're not allowed to come.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
so they wouldn't let me in. So
right.
I asked the Vaxxed bus. There's their technical engineer who's also the bus driver, and he does a lot of stories with them. His name is Anu, and he's kind of the good cop out of the good cop, bad cop. He's the one who came over and kind of tried to make friends with me and laughed at my sign and told me that he actually wants to have me on the bus for an interview sometime on the tour.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'm considering that. I have to play that one right. But
what do they plan to do with these stories? Do you know? Is this like a second movie?
Yeah, they're making a sequel where they're like, oh, here's a bunch of families who show off their kids and say this kid's damaged with vaccines and this kid's never had a vaccine and is fine.
Right.
Of course, they're not. I got a sneaking suspicion that if a parent came up and said, oh, yeah, I've got a vaccinated and unvaccinated kid. Here's my vaccinated kid who's perfectly healthy, and here's my unvaccinated kid who can't have vaccines because they have cancer.
Yeah.
I don't think those kids will get in the movie.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so. But.
Well, that's interesting because just recently the Australian Vaccination Skeptics Network, which is our anti-vaxxers, they've advertised that the Vax team is sending a videographer out to Australia to do a Vax kind of bus thing. So I presume that's going to be footage for the sequel as well.
Yeah, I think it's part of the same tour. Because there's a break coming up after these few stops, and then they'll be back for more stops in August. And so I was looking at that break because their schedule's been kind of fluid, and that break is exactly when they've got their Australian dates lined up.
Okay.
So I'll get a little bit trying to sit at home before I go back out on the road.
Wow. So, I think you're a brave man.
Thank you. Or foolish. One of the two.
Well, yeah, but, we've had people in Australia who've gone to anti-vax events and have been kicked out or been yelled at and stuff like that. So, it's not something that I would want to do necessarily.
No,
I think I'd rather...
I don't suggest it.
I'm okay doing it from behind my keyboard, but I'm not sure if I'd want to turn up. So, I think you're doing a good thing.
Thank you.
And do you hope to achieve anything specifically out of this, or just sort of be in their face a little bit?
I have battled with anti-vaxxers for about 5 years online, and every one of my victories was unexpected. So I'm just kind of going with the flow. I'm just going to stand there with my sign. When the opportunity arises and I can grab it, I will, if there's something that goes down. But even right now, I'm at least exposing them in some way to some people. And when reporters show up, even the reporters who fall into the false equivalency trap and print out an article that really isn't a good article about the whole situation, like that just happened. I had in Montana. My picture was on the front page.
Yeah, the Helena paper. I saw that.
Yeah, like the Sunday paper. They're like, the anti-vaxxers come to town, and there's a picture of me with my protest sign.
I know.
So that to me is worth $1,000. I would have loved to have been on the Vaxxed bus when they got that newspaper and saw my photo on their article. So, if that's all I can do, great. But hopefully, one of the great things that happened at one of the stops was I met some parents who were also there protesting with their own signs.
Oh, great!
And they have 12 children.
Wow.
And one of their daughters relies on other people to be vaccinated to save her, and not just in the normal herd immunity sense, but she actually has to have plasma transfusions from vaccinated people into her to help give her protection against diseases, like on a weekly basis. And so they were there protesting. They were a super sweet family. They actually go to Seattle, to the Seattle Children's Hospital every couple months and spend weeks there. So hopefully I'll be able to reconnect with them when they do that. So if it's just those kind of connections I make, then it's a successful trip.
So would you suggest that somebody does this in Australia then?
Follows them around?
Yeah.
You know what I really want people to do, and this is probably petty of me.
Do tell.
What I really encourage people to do is to make an appointment with the Vaxxed bus and get on and tell a vaccine injury story that's completely preposterous, and see if there's anything at all that they will dismiss as improbable.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they will. I think you could really get on there and claim absolutely anything. And I've asked them. I said, have you ever heard a vaccine story that even you said, I hate vaccines as much as the next guy, but vaccines probably didn't cause that? No, not a single one.
Wow.
So that's what I would encourage people to do, is just go up, make up the stupidest story you can. When you get on their Facebook page with your YouTube video, and then have a reveal and say, I just made all that up, and they got it. So
you mean like the vase where somebody said it turned them into the Incredible Hulk, and that made it onto their that kind of thing.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I probably wouldn't say that, but I would. You go in there and say you have 6 kids and they all have all different conditions, all from vaccines, or just go way over, or say one of my favorite ones that actually see people claim and it's taken seriously is, I didn't vaccinate my kid. They got autism anyway, so I'm pretty sure they were vaccinated behind my back.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, is that a stretch?
I mean, that's really twisting yourself in knots, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And that's where, and nobody disagrees. Nobody calls it out. Nobody says, that's probably not true. They're like, they do that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean,
What is there, like, black ops vans driving around and snatching kids?
Pretty much.
That story I just said, that comes from the AVN.
Go to medicalkidnap.info or whatever these crazy sites are, and that's literally what they're claiming.
Yeah. Well, Craig, thanks for taking the time to talk to us today on the Skeptic Zone, and good luck with the rest of your Vaxxed tour.
Thank you very much.
And stay safe, and say hi to Andrew Wakefield for us.
I will. I'll give him your love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you happen to be in Jackson, Wyoming in the United States of America on Monday, July the 31st at 6 p.m., a new movie called Toxic Puzzle, which looks into the role for an environmental neurotoxin in Alzheimer's disease and Lou Gehrig's disease, is premiering at the Arts Centre. And I mention this because I'm in it. It's about my lab's work, and it's narrated by the wonderful Harrison Ford. So get along to that. If you want to do that and you're in town, Google Toxic Puzzle at Centre for the Arts in Jackson. And until next time, this has been Dr. Rachie Reports.
Calling all Skeptic Zone listeners. Do you live in or near Glasgow, or are you planning to visit sometime? Then you're in luck, because the Glasgow Skeptics have got your Monday nights sorted. We're committed to filling up every available Monday night with talks on science and skepticism. Past speakers include Eugenie Scott, Jerry Coyne, Michael Marshall, Nate Phelps, Tom and Cecil from Cognitive Dissonance, P.Z. Myers, Richard Wiseman, A.C. Grayling, Noah Heath and Eli from The Scathing Atheist, Simon Singh, Rebecca Watson, and a multitude of local academics and skeptics. There's literally nothing better you can do on a Monday night in Glasgow that doesn't involve taking your clothes off. So come join us. We've also got a vibrant online community. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and get involved with the discussion. Glasgow Skeptics. Self-help for your brain.
Once again, we head to the website of Australian Skeptics, skeptics.com.au, with a report here written by Tim Mendham on the 10th of July 2017, TGA's list of medical indications full of pseudoscience. The Therapeutic Goods Administration, TGA, has published a draft list of, quote, permitted indications, end quote, for listed complementary medicines that includes many terms and concepts that are straight out of the pseudoscience catalogue. Quote, permitted indications, end quote, are statements that will describe the therapeutic uses for listed medicines. When the permitted indications reform is implemented, sponsors will be required to use them to enter their product indications in the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods. Permitted indications will be assessed against a set of eligibility criteria to ensure that they are appropriate for low-risk listed medicines that are not assessed pre-market. The Commonwealth Government announced in September last year that the TGA would introduce such a list with the purpose of, point, ensuring that listed medicines can only make low-level indications that are suitable for medicines that do not undergo pre-market assessment. Point, providing transparency for sponsors on what indications are suitable for listed medications to help prevent inadvertent non-compliance. And, point, avoiding consumers being misled by inappropriate indications on listed medicine labels. Dr. Ken Harvey, a regular campaigner against pseudoscientific claims in the alt-med industry, says that among the 1,345 permitted indications in the draft list are many which lack evidence and for which complaints have previously been upheld by the TGA Complaints Resolution Panel, such as number 740-747 muscle cramp, typically claims made for magnesium. Quote, in addition, the list contains numerous nonsensical traditional Chinese medicine, quote, traditional indications, end quote, without any disclaimer, such as number 1, quote, harmonize middle burner, spleen and stomach, end quote, and number 6, quote, unblock, open, relax, meridians, end quote, and number 115, quote, balance yin and yang, end quote. Harvey and others have argued that the proposed list should be short and only contain modest claims such as, quote, may assist, may help, end quote, etc. Quote, in addition, we argued that for consumers to make informed purchases, claims based on traditional use should always have a disclaimer along the lines of what the US FTC proposed for homeopathic products. Quote, "Warning. Traditional use does not imply efficacy or guarantee safety. This product's traditional claims are based on alternative health practices that are not accepted by most modern medical experts. There is no scientific evidence that this product works." End quote. However, industry representatives argued that they needed a long list of permitted indications and that disclaimers were unnecessary or would be misunderstood or would have no impact on consumers. The list is due to come into effect at the same time next year, with the draft lists available at the TGA website until October the 31st, 2017. During this period, interested parties, including suppliers, can review and provide comments on the list and propose additional indications or evidence qualifiers prior to the list being finalised. Balance the yin and yang, eh? That story comes to us from skeptics.com.au, published on the 10th of July 2017 by Tim Mendham.
It never ends. A friend starts talking about his new Reiki master, and someone else just posted about another all-natural cancer cure that they don't want you to know about. As skeptics, we dedicate a lot of time trying to protect those around us, but there's a way that you can reach millions. Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia is a group that is working to keep the best skeptical information at everyone's fingertips in all languages. Join us. Training is self-paced and fun, and we have our very own super secret Facebook group. You will be educating the world in your sleep. To find out more, email us at gsowteam@gmail.com. Guerrilla Skepticism. The time is now.
Music by bensound.com.
As skeptics know, chemicals are, they're everywhere. In this interview, guest reporter Kevin Davies talks to Professor John Carver from the Australian National University about some of the misconceptions regarding chemicals and about the book, Chemistry in the Marketplace.
I'm here at the ANU with Professor John Carver. How are you going, John?
Very well, thank you.
Well, we've just been at a very interesting book launch.
Yes, we've launched a book called Chemistry in the Marketplace, which is the 6th edition of this book. It's been around since 1978. It's a book which explains chemistry in a very general sense to the public about how important chemicals are and what in their environment, in the environment and around us, and how chemicals are everywhere.
Yeah. So, do you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Director of the Research School of Chemistry here at the ANU, and I've been in this job for 4 years. I'm a Professor of Chemistry, and I've been an academic since 1988. I've had experience as an academic at the University of Wollongong and the University of Adelaide, and I actually did my Ph.D. here many years ago, and I've come back to the place after a long gap. What I do in my job, I run the school, I do a lot of administration, but also do research and teach. So I have a very multifaceted job.
Excellent, excellent. Now, I just wanted to ask you a few questions about some of the myths about chemicals. So, to start off with, when you see somebody advertising a product as being chemical-free, what is your reaction?
Well, of course, I say that's rubbish because chemicals are everywhere. We're full of chemicals ourselves, and we're comprised everything, proteins, sugars, fats, lipids, everything. They're all protein. They're all chemicals. So to say something is chemical-free, maybe that implies that there's no added synthetic chemicals in there, but it obviously contains chemicals which are naturally there.
So why do you think there is this attitude towards being, say, chemical-free, even if, as you say, it is rubbish?
Well, I think it's because people have some misconceptions about chemicals, which come from, obviously, situations when things go awry with chemicals, when there's a chemical plant that that releases chemicals that are potentially toxic. When you get a spill in a river, for example, of a chemical that is man-made and causes some damage. Spraying pesticides or herbicides on crops that will obviously work to kill insects, etc. But if you have too much of them in there, or even if you add phosphates, for example, to improve your yields of crops, these are all important aspects that enable us to feed the world, but they do have consequences in people misconstruing them, or them being misused potentially and causing problems. And so it's an attitude thing, I think, that we as society think in terms of chemicals being bad, when in fact the reason why many of the aspects of our society, why we have such an advanced society, is related to our understanding of the chemicals and our use of them.
And what are some of the strange things people have come to you in regards to chemicals? Like, has anybody ever said something that really just made you sit back and go, what on earth?
Well, I think when I work in an area, I work on proteins in foods, and we've made some interesting discoveries about their important nature, particularly in milk proteins, and found, for example, that if you treat milk in a certain way, you'll create species called amyloid fibrils that are potentially toxic to you. We've had people come up to me and say, well, are those particular species related to diseases? And they're not, but they are present in various disease-related diseases such as Alzheimer's, the deposits in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Oh, wow.
But if you ingest milk, you don't get them. It's just that they happen to, if you treat the milk in a certain way, you'll form these type of structures in proteins. So it's how you spin the story, I think, how you can sometimes misconstrue things. I think that we have to be very careful about. And of course, we're ingesting chemicals all the time in our foods, which the vast majority of which are naturally there. But our bodies are very attuned, have got systems, have got means of detoxifying that work very efficiently. We have really, chemicals have done tremendous benefit for us in terms of food preservation, for example. We add preservatives to food. We've been adding it for millennia to food. I mean, salt is a preservative. We've been adding for ages. Salt has, if you add too much salt, of course, it has consequences for your health in terms of elevated blood pressure, etc. So it's always a balance, I think, and you just got to get things into perspective.
I think that's probably a very good place to end it. So, John Carver, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Good to talk to you.
Save the date, SciCon is returning to Las Vegas for 2017. Today you turned on your computer or your phone and Facebook told you that vaccines are an evil government plot. Twitter told you the sun is revolving around a flat earth. And the House Science Committee told you that climate change is nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, up is down, true is false, Oceania has always been at war with East Asia, and dogs and cats may in fact be living together. Enough already. It's time once again for the forces of reason and science to come together. Time for critical thinkers to connect, learn from each other and sharpen their skills. Time for the leading lights of skepticism to share their wisdom and rally the troops. It's time for SciCon 2017 back in Las Vegas. October the 26th to the 29th, join luminaries such as James the Amazing Randi, Richard Dawkins, Eugenie Scott, The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, Susan Gerbic, Harriet Hall, Richard Wiseman, Carrie Poppy, Joe Nickel, and many, many more. The Master of Ceremonies is none other than George Harab. For the biggest Skeptics event of the year, returning triumphantly to the Excalibur Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, the City of Illusions, SciCon 2017 will be packed with fascinating talks and presentations, dazzling entertainment, and fun social events with fellow skeptics. This October, get away from fake news and conspiracy theories filling up your news feeds at SciCon 2017, your alternative to alternative facts. For more information, visit www.csiconference.org. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Now, next week, a very special series of reports and interviews we have for you. Heidi Robertson, the raw skeptic, is going to be reporting from Star Stuff, the astronomy weekend in Byron Bay. And what a fascinating report it is. At one stage, Heidi slips on a pair of virtual reality goggles and goes for a walk on the planet Mars. It's wonderful stuff from Heidi Robertson, and some interviews beside that coming up next week. Also, I interview Claire Klingenberg from the Czech Republic, who is involved this year in putting together the European Skeptics Congress. Oh, I wish I could go to that, but our reporter and president of Australian Skeptics, Iran Sergeyev, will be there. He'll be on hand. Lucky Iran. Also, part one of a series of reports with Anne Reed from the National Center for Science Education based in Oakland, California. I went along to the National Center, last week, I guess it was, or the week before, sat down with Anne to get a series of interviews about the work of the National Center for Science Education when it comes to the good information about evolution especially, and also more recently, climate change science. But of course, coming up in the weeks to come, even more interviews from NECSS, including interview with Bob Novella from The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Thank you to those people who keep supporting the Skeptic Zone by Patreon or micropayments with PayPal. I'm delighted to say that owing to your generosity and your continued support, I was able to send one of my reporters a brand new microphone just this week. So look forward. I won't tell you who it is. They can do that when they give their first report with their new microphone. In fact, I've been inspired. I went to IKEA today. This is not a plug for IKEA especially. I certainly don't get any money from them. And I bought a little collapsible cloth cube. It's very strange. It only cost $5. But I'm going to, in the next few days, get some acoustic foam, fit out the interior of this box, this cube, and make myself a little desktop voice recording booth, I guess you'd call it. I'm going to have some fun with that. Why not? And if it's any good, well, I guess you'll hear the results next week on the Skeptic Zone. But until then, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter @SkepticZone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation.